Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom.
That boy is corrupt. Yes, I'm talking about you, Fitzy.
Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? I'm Luke,
And I'm Emma.
and this week we're discussing Chapter 18, Fool's Kiss. And the epigraph of this one is another excerpt from Badgerlock's Old Blood Tales, talking about the wit and old blood in general. Basically, how there is the myth and the scary story that people of the Six Duchies tell their kids that witted people can transform into their animals and wreak havoc among people. It says the bloodier of the legends are of witted in wolves' skins, who in that guise rend their neighbors' families as well as their flocks. Less sanguine are the tales that depict witted suitors taking on the shapes of birds or cats or even dancing bears to gain access to a bedchamber in the course of a seduction. And Badgerlock's Old Blood Tales goes on to say that while it is true that some witted who have been long in a partnership with their animals sometimes take on their habits of posture, diet, and mannerisms, a man who eats, dens, scavenges, and smells like a bear does not become a bear. If that myth of shape changing could be vanquished, it would go far to reestablishing trust between the witted and unwitted.
Yeah, so in this story, Fitz as Badgerlock touches on a little bit of the foreshadowing of using a witted beast a beast form, I guess, to sneak into a suitor's bedroom and get their interest through their wit magic, which he writes off as something that could never happen and wouldn't be done. But as rereaders, we know that that is exactly what's happening right now with Dutiful
Yeah.
and his cat.
Yeah, definitely something like that for sure. And while it's not necessarily shape changing, because
Right.
this is a lot more permanent, it is still a human in the shape and the form of an animal, even though that animal also has its own, consciousness and things. There's just things that go beyond the ken of Fitz chivalry at this point. And as he was writing as Tom Badgerlock, he didn't understand a lot of the nuances of old blood culture. This is, again, a history of somebody who never lived with the people that he's writing about.
Yes, he spent, a full year?
Yeah.
1 full year with
one community.
Yes. So he's writing from the standpoint of knowing,
Yeah.
but he doesn't actually know. And I'm really curious if these excerpts are supposed to be things that were written like a long time ago, before the happenings of this book, as Badgerlock's tales from his time before coming back into action.
I feel like yes. I feel like these were part of the things that he would send off to Chade, intermittently. But I guess it could be after.
Yeah, it's really
Tawny Man trilogy, but
if it's after, then you think that he wouldn't so vehemently be against these things being possible.
Right.
But I guess still the idea that a person is shape changing isn't true. That's never the case. But there could be, he's not going into the nuance of sharing the beast's body and what that does.
Right.
So I guess potentially could be before or after. And it is just a little excerpt of presumably a larger body of work. So you never know.
So we last left off with Lord Golden sending Tom Badgerlock out to retrieve his favorite silver necklace or chain or something, in the guise that Fitz would go out and take care of Nighteyes, see that he was, doing okay. And Fitz does not find him in the place that he left him. So he's a little bit worried, but he also does not want to reach out to contact Nighteyes through the wit in case people are watching. He's being very covert this time. So he is following the tracks of the horses, believing that Nighteyes would have done the same. As I trailed them through the sun-drenched hills, their tracks went down into a draw and crossed a small stream. They had stopped here to let the horses water, and there in the muddy bank was a wolf's paw print atop the horse's hoof mark. So he was tracking them. Then eventually, Fitz does catch up with Nighteyes.
I think it's really interesting that Fitz doesn't talk about his connection with Nighteyes as something that he can follow without opening himself to the wit. Because as we know, the way he found Nighteyes prior to this, when Nighteyes was injured, was he sort of pinpointed him with their wit connection and followed that. And so here he's not doing even that, which seems like something that would be like a more base level, less trackable. But that's how dire things are and how scared Fitz is about himself, but also Nighteyes being caught in this
Right.
sort of whatever is happening. And because they're not using the wit to talk with each other in any way, they have both sort of put this on the back burner. When Fitz does find Nighteyes, it's really interesting because it's really uncanny for Fitz. 3 hills later, I caught up with him. He knew I was coming. He did not pause to wait for me, but moved on. The gait caught my eyes. It was not his purposeful trot. He walked. And as he comes up to Nighteyes, he tells him that he brought him meat and says, I felt his awareness of me, but he sent no thought toward me. It was eerie. And then he feeds Nighteyes. So there's a sort of weird feeling of there's my partner, my wit partner, but none of the extra emotion or connection. And it makes Fitz so nervous. It's just really interesting to see that sort of the one connection he has where he doesn't have to be reassured. Has been sort of taken from him in a way. And you see that sort of nervousness playing out with like, oh, it's so eerie to have me say something out loud to my bond mate and then not reply.
Yeah, definitely very, very weird for Fitz here. And eventually Nighteyes, as he sees Fitz take out the salve from his pack that Lord Golden provided, kind of sighs and huffs and goes onto his side and lets
Yes.
Fitz apply the salve. But as they're touching, of course, their connection and their bond opens up a little bit more, and then they start communicating to one another. Fitz says that the salve is honey and bear grease, and Nighteyes is licking at the salve, and Fitz doesn't see any problem with that because it'll just drive the salve deeper into the wound and help him out more. It would be wisest for me to keep following them, even if I don't go swiftly. The longer you are delayed, the colder the trail will be. Easier for you to come to me than to try to follow fading tracks. There's no arguing with that. So Nighteyes obviously picks up on the fact that this is just a quick stop. This is not Fitz coming to join the hunt.
Yes.
He has to go back because they have to manufacture an excuse yet for Lord Golden to leave the Brisinga's keep. So Nighteyes is like, I'm going to keep walking and following this trail, even though I can't do it super fast, because it's much better for you to find me than you to try to pick up a 3-day-old trail.
Right. And it is a good point from Nighteyes, right? Not very wolf-like, but it is a good point that he's going to have an easier time spending this time slowly going after them than waiting for Fitz to be ready. And so it's like better in the long run.
Right. Nighteyes, as a parting, basically says, be careful what you dream tonight. And Fitz replies, I won't seek to dream with them. And Nighteyes says, I fear they may seek you. So Nighteyes is very suspicious and cautious about this situation. I think even more so than Fitz. Fitz is starting to get kind of that same feeling. He knows there's something up, and some of that reflects later on in this chapter. However, Nighteyes has always kind of been ahead of him in this situation of being like, there's something really weird going on, because Nighteyes is the only one who has seen these people up in personal, close to each other. So that kind of ruffles Fitz's feathers a little bit, and he's a little bit apprehensive then as well.
And I think it's really interesting here that we have Fitz taking the advice of Nighteyes, because clearly they have this sort of relationship where, as Nighteyes calls it, this is Nighteyes' little brother, Fitz, and he is the protector to Fitz. I think their dynamic is so close and so bonded that way. And Fitz doesn't even question anymore, sort of like why he would think that, or,
Right.
whatever. He just takes that as sage advice of, yeah, you're right, I should be careful. And also, I do want to point out that before Nighteyes warns Fitz, Fitz is talking about how the decision of Nighteyes is to go after the trail is really dangerous, and he doesn't like that. But he's also acknowledging that that is a choice that Nighteyes is allowed to make, and that
And Nighteyes knows the consequences of as well, because
Yeah.
Nighteyes can't really hunt for himself in this condition.
exactly. So I think it's really interesting to see this big change of trusting Nighteyes' judgment again, because before he was so scared of the impending death of his partner
Right.
that it was like such a like, oh, you're so fragile, I don't want you to do anything. And here we have him acknowledging that he doesn't like what Nighteyes is going to do for the danger aspects, but still allowing Nighteyes the agency to make his own choices about what he's capable of. And I think that's really important too, because it does really show that conversation that they had where Nighteyes is like, hey, stop treating me like this, it makes me scared, has really like taken hold in Fitz, and he is sort of trying to give that back to Nighteyes, his youth, while he still has it, I guess.
Right. So Nighteyes' warning here to Fitz kind of sparks a conversation between them about Fitz's magic. Fitz starts this off by wishing that he had grown up with the wit and surrounded more by practitioners of that, so he would know what they were getting into here. And Nighteyes is like, I don't think you would know what you're dealing with. What you do, how you link to him, meaning Dutiful, that is not just skill. It is the crossing of your magic. You open the door with one and travel with the other. As when I attacked Justin after he had bridged into you with skill. His skill made the bridge, but I used my bond with you to run across it. He had deliberately shared that thought with me, acknowledging a worry that had been growing in me for some time. Dog magic, Justin had called my wit, and told me that my use of the skill stank of it. Verity had never complained of that, but Verity, I admitted unwillingly, shared my truncated education in the skill. Perhaps he had not detected a staining of the wit in my use of the skill, or perhaps he had been too kind to ever rebuke me with it. Now I worried for my wolf. Do not follow them too closely. Try not to let them know that we track them. What did you fear, that I would attack a cat and a boy on horseback? No, that battle belongs to you. I will trail this game. It is up to you to bring it to bay and down it. So Fitz is now worried that, okay, any of my magics might be very uniquely identifiable to me if I have skill and it stinks of wit, and vice versa. And now my partner is off by himself wandering around and also might be detectable, and we just don't know enough about this magic to do anything about it.
Yeah, and I do want to ask, do you think that Justin could actually smell his dog magic on his magic, so to speak? Is that a real thing? Or was that sort of a diss at how Fitz was raised? Everybody knows that Fitz grew up in the stables with the hunting dogs, and he wasn't as good as the other coterie members. So is it maybe like Fitz taking something literal that was more of a figurative insult?
I think they knew he was witted in some aspect. Or at least Galen kind of filtered that rumor or
I guess
prompted that, because Galen probably would have known through rummaging around Fitz's head.
right.
So he could have, without straight confirming it, maybe kind of nudged the coterie in that direction, because it wasn't just Justin who spoke up about dog magic. It was, I forget her name too.
Oh, I don't remember. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, the woman in there who was kind of the leader at the end. But
Celine?
maybe something like that.
Ooh, that might not be right.
I think it was an S. Anyways, The other coterie members did mention stuff about dog magic and we know what you are. And there's a lot of sly things that I think Galen perpetrated and started insinuating. So I feel like they kind of just associated him with that, but
Fair.
it came from the initial knowledge of him being witted.
Who killed Smithy? Or not? Was it Smithy? His little dog from Patience?
It was Cobb.
Cobb did it? He was the assassin?
Pretty sure, yeah.
Okay.
It was either, oh man, it was Cobb or somebody else.
Well, I was wondering if it was Justin.
No, it wasn't one of the skill users. I don't
Okay,
think.
because I was just thinking about how Fitz was with Smithy in that moment, and
I know.
so I wonder if, like,
I'm pretty sure Cobb is the one who hit or stabbed Beric.
okay.
So I think that's who killed Smithy as well.
Okay. Well, either way. Not super important. I was just wondering if maybe that's why they also knew. But yeah, I don't know. I just found it really odd. And I also think it's interesting that Fitz feels as though Verity, he and Verity are comparable in what they know and their lessons being cut short.
That was really funny too.
Yeah, because like, okay, Fitz, you were there for like a few months and you learned the basics. You didn't even get to anything. He was mostly trained by a real skill master who died before he finished training. Like, he got most of it, I'm pretty sure.
And then Galen said, "You guys are good enough. I'm not teaching you anymore."
Yeah.
So Galen was more trained than the princes for sure.
But Verity was way more trained than Fitz ever could be.
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, I thought it was really funny that he's like, well, he also didn't get a full education. It's like, well, there's a difference between, like, you know, going to a week of classes and going to 4 years of classes.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Or a lifetime. I don't know.
But yeah, Fitz is worried here about being detected, surrounded by so many people, and with Nighteyes commenting on, yeah, I'll just track them. It's your tasks to bring down this prey. Fitz is like, yeah, I have to think about not just bringing back a boy to Buckkeep, but bringing back a boy who probably doesn't want to go, plus his compatriots.
Yeah. How far would I go in my efforts to return him to the Queen? And what limits would he set in his determination to have his own way? Which is a really good conundrum that Fitz is in here.
And also, would those who have him have any constraints as to what they would do to keep him? So Fitz doesn't really know what he's walking into. This might be we will kill everybody who tries to stop us kind of thing. Or it could be, we're trying to get some money. You know, he doesn't know what kind of situation this is.
And even worse, he doesn't know anyone involved enough to know who they are as people.
Yeah.
He's never met Dutiful. He doesn't know. He can hear the stories about how he is really put together and quiet, but clearly he didn't open up.
Yeah.
So there's no one who really knows what he's capable of doing. And so I think it's really interesting that we have all these layers to this mission that are just now coming to Fitz when he started off this thing as like excited. This is going to be an adventure with my friend and we're just going to get in and get out. And now the reality of you can't really just do that. You don't have enough information. This is really dangerous. It's really hitting now.
You know, last episode we talked about how we were wondering if Lord Golden was selfish in his reasons for not just leaving and going after the prince right away. Here we have Fitz agreeing with Lord Golden's decision to stay and like we can't just leave, and gives a couple other reasons here that Fitz thinks through that helps me come to terms with that decision as well. Because he says, we can't just drop everything to go from like the hunt and go get the prince and bring him back. I could see the consequences of that. If the Brisingas were convinced that we pursued him, they would certainly get a warning to him. He would flee faster and hide deeper. Worse, they might directly interfere with our pursuit of him. I had no wish to meet with an untimely accident as we tracked Prince Dutiful. So that's the other thing. If they truly think the Brisingas are involved, them leaving the morning they get like a hint of knowledge of where things are, the Prasingas could then send their own agents after them and pursue them. So
Right.
they would be harried the whole way and would have much more difficult time. If they can manufacture an okay excuse, they maybe get followed by one person to see what they're up to. If they are nefarious, the Brasingas are nefarious, but it's not going to be a whole force tracking them. You know, this is the safer way, is what Lord Golden chose, to try to socially extricate themselves in a way that seems innocuous. And that's kind of the fool's plan,
Yeah,
is to come together to do something.
I don't know. I still feel like the initial reaction of Fool stemmed from a selfish place with this Lord Golden character, but I also understand that there are real reasons that work out in the favor of Lord Golden staying. So, I don't know. I'm still not like fully okay with it, but I get it also.
Fitz returns to Galekeep. Lord Golden is napping in his chambers, and Fitz is kind of restless but also tired at the same time. But eventually, Lord Golden wakes up and says, "Did you find my necklace?" They stay in character for the most part, but when they're close together, they ask about Nighteyes. "How is he?" "Stiff, sore, but I think he will recover." "Excellent. I've selected your evening clothes for us and laid it out in your room. Really, Badgerlock, you must learn to handle my garments more carefully." "I'll try, my lord," I muttered, but I could not get my heart back into the game. I was suddenly tired of the whole charade. "Have you thought of a discreet way for us to leave?" "No." He strolled to the table. Wine had been left there for him. He poured a glass and drank it, then poured another. "But I've thought of an indiscreet one, and already laid the groundwork for it this afternoon. Not without regrets. I'll be compromising Lord Golden's reputation somewhat. But what is a nobleman without a bit of scandal to his name? It will probably just increase my popularity at court. Everyone will want to know my side of it, and will speculate on what truly happened. I think that if I succeed at this, it will convince Lady Brasinga that her fears that we are seeking the prince are groundless. No proper emissary of the queen would behave as I intend." He gave a sickly smile. "What have you done?" "Nothing just yet. But I fancy that by morning our leaving will be facilitated as swiftly as we could wish." He drank again. "Sometimes I don't care for the things that I must do," he observed, and there was a plaintive note in his voice. He finished the glass of wine as if girding himself for a task. And Fitz finds out that he laid out green jerkin and yellow leggings.
Yes. His least favorite color combo.
Yes. And the fool's like, "Oh, but it'll set off your dark everything."
Yes. The ladies will be glad for it at least. But I do want to talk here a little bit about the Fool and
Chugging 2 glasses of wine before dinner.
and spoiler alert, he does get very drunk for real this time for tonight. And I just want to know, why is he actually drinking now?
I think he really does hate this, because what he's going in to do is to put all of his attention and make it seem like he is making a play for Sydel. Like, hey, I'm super attracted to you. I only care about you. I'm snubbing all the rest of the people in the hunt. Uncomfortably, I am flirting with you in front of all of your parents, and you're promised in front of everybody, and you won't care because I'm really good at this.
Yeah.
So he's making it uncomfortable for everybody else. Civil really mad. And I think he hates that. I think like Lord Golden or Beloved, I think they really don't want to make other people uncomfortable.
Okay.
Unless it's Fitz. And then they love it. But I really think that this kind of thing is just, I'm playing with the hearts of 2 young people. I am purposefully insulting things, but also with what I mentioned before, it could be, and what you brought up in the last episode, it could be Lord Golden socially being like, I'm sad that I have to sacrifice some of Lord Golden's stature in court, and then trying to like say, oh, but he could be more popular because it's scandal, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I just really think that Beloved doesn't like overtly messing with things this much and
That's fair.
making the fool out of people this much.
Especially people he doesn't deem are worthy of that sort of thing.
Right.
Because I
Yeah.
think he has no problem doing that to people who deserve it.
Especially
like-
if it was their role, or
Yeah.
his role. He was the fool, right? The king's fool.
Yeah.
He's supposed to do that. Shrewd loved that. This is him taking his own initiative to mess with people.
Yeah.
And, maybe he saw a future with Civil and Sydel and it was great.
And
And
this
now-
messes with it potentially. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair. Yeah, that's what I was sort of thinking on. I know I talk about this a lot, but we only really get that sort of one point of view of a white, and that's through Bee's lens. And I always think of the scene where she sees everybody's paths for the first time with Beloved, although we don't know it's Beloved at first. But it's so interesting to me that potentially Beloved is here seeing everyone's paths, right? Like I mean, maybe you grow into a place where you don't have to see the paths all the time, but he knows that what he's doing is messing up the best potential future for these people, adds that extra layer of like, ugh, I do not want to do this, but ultimately greater good scenario, I have to. I don't know.
Also, he's purposely going to make a fool out of himself, which is
Also not
tough to
something-
do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in a lot of ways Beloved is a proud person.
Oh,
And-
yeah.
I think that it's really easy to overlook that aspect of their personality especially because we start with them being the fool, like a court jester and just sort of not caring. And I think Fool does have a lot of not care attitude, but there's little peaks of it, like in this moment where you can just see that there is sort of pride and ego that they struggle with, that like they want to be liked, they want to be important, and whenever they have to like take away from that, it is hard. So I don't know, I think that makes them more interesting and well-rounded as a person.
Yeah. But as Fitz sees his clothing, the green jerkin and yellow leggings, Lord Golden says, perhaps it is a shade too bright, but with such a grin that Fitz can't take him seriously. Doesn't mean a word of his apology. Stop glowering, Badgerlock. I expect my servants to maintain a pleasant demeanor. So obeying Lord Golden took all of Fitz's will and strength to dissemble, and he walked with a straight face
Yes.
and a pleasant demeanor.
That is pleasant for Fitz.
This was a larger group than the night before, for Lady Brisinga had extended her hospitality to those who had hunted with her earlier. They might have been invisible for all the notice Lord Golden gave them. Sydel was seated at a low table with young Civil. An assortment of feathers was spread out before her on a cloth, and they seemed to be discussing them. She had obviously been watching the door, for the moment Lord Golden entered, her face was transfigured. She gleamed like a lantern in the darkness. Young Civil also underwent a transformation, but it was not so pleasant. He could not very well sneer at a guest in his mother's home, but his features went very still and cold. Dismay clutched at my belly. No, I wanted no part of this. But Lord Golden, smiling and charming, made directly for the pair. His greetings to everyone else in the chamber were brief to the point of neglect. Without even a pretense of subtlety, he seated himself between them, obliging Civil to move over to make room for him. From that moment on, he virtually ignored everyone else in the room as he focused all of his allure on the girl. His every movement was a seduction. And Fitz kind of likens it later on to being hunted.
Yeah, he can see the effect that Lord Golden's attention has on Sydel, and how this sort of reaction, it's making her react. She's all giggly and flirting back, but it's really clear that Lord Golden is in control and he is on the hunt, like you said.
Right.
And it is really uncomfortable for Fitz. I think it's really interesting because Fitz hates everything to do with this part of his identity, right? Like he hates manipulating other people to get what he needs, which is so interesting because he very clearly does understand that sometimes that's how it has to work. And he knows that these people aren't even necessarily good people,
Right.
because they definitely knew that the prince was here and are in some way part of this plot to get rid of the prince, right? Or not get rid of the prince, but they're part of whatever is happening to the prince. He knows that and still hates that they have to do these sort of tactics to,
Right.
move people around like game pieces to instead of just being up front all the time.
Sydel abruptly rises and stalks away, and his mother speaks to a woman at her side, and so Sydel is, intercepted, and they have heated words, but you can't really follow what's going on between them. Lord Golden's words rose over the general conversation to proclaim, "Would that I had a looking glass to show you, but you must be content to see how well this ornament becomes you by looking into my eyes." So
he's really laying it on thick.
Yeah, he is. Earlier in the day, I had been appalled at how brazenly she had stalked Lord Golden and how willing she had been to throw over her young suitor for the strange nobleman. Now I almost pitied Sydel. One hears of birds charmed by snakes, though I have never seen such a thing. What I witnessed now was more like a flower leaning toward the light. She absorbed his attention and blossomed in its warmth. In the space of a few moments, her girlish infatuation with his age and wealth and fine ways had been transformed into a more womanly warmth and fascination with him. I knew with crawling certainty that she was his to bed if he chose. "He goes too far," Laurel's breathless whisper was tinged with horror as she strolled past me. "He excels at that," I murmured in reply. And Fitz is all of a sudden worried that his role as Lord Golden's bodyguard might actually be put to the test tonight.
Yeah, clearly Sydel is very upset, and it doesn't look like he's alone in not really loving what Lord Golden is up to.
And this is all before dinner, so Lady Brisinga now announces it's time to go eat, and Sydel hesitates, and that's a fatal mistake because Lord Golden jumps in at the chance of escorting Sydel in, which leaves his slighted mother, Sybil's slighted mother, standing there being escorted by her son instead of the guest of honor. So again, this is Beloved's plan, is to embarrass himself, Lord Golden,
yes,
by focusing on one girl, ignoring everyone else and insulting them, and getting so drunk as everyone wants him gone, basically.
Yeah, just be so annoying that everybody's like, please leave.
Yeah.
Which is a really good strategy, to be honest. He is really using this sort of court etiquette against the people, because even if they are sort of these potential bad guys who have the prince and have some nefarious plot going on, they are still just as beholden to social graces as everybody else. And so he's really using that fact in their advantage. And who would act like that if they were actually looking for the prince? Right. Who would debase themselves to that level, especially in a culture where it seems like sort of your standing in society is everything?
Yeah, yeah. So they go into dinner, and Fitz is still an observer here, trying to gauge reactions to everyone. And Lord Golden's tactic seems to be kind of revealing some of those reactions and how those people work. So obviously Sydel angry, Lady Brisinga pretty angry as well. However, Sydel's parents are obviously torn because the Brisingas have been their friends for a long time, and basically Sydel and Sydel have been promised. However, Sydel is now attracted the attention of a far wealthier, far higher social standing noble who could potentially raise their family incredibly high, and it's a very, very rich match for their lower noble daughter. But it's also, a noble who maybe doesn't care about marriage and doing things properly. And so Lady Grayling is very tense and anxious and worried that Sydel cannot toe the line between refusing the nobleman but also keeping his interest and not
Yeah,
being ruined, quote
right.
unquote.
Right, because obviously there is this sort of game going on at the social level where nobles of higher stature don't just fall in love with girls way below their station. That's not, I mean, it can happen for sure.
Yeah.
And there are ways to procure that interest or prolong it. However, like you said, Sydel's mother is not confident that her daughter is able to do that. And it is a real fear that this is just a fleeting interest from the Lord. So you don't want to get on the bad side of the current betrothed family and son, because
Yeah.
that's still going to be there when this
Mhm.
guy ultimately leaves. So it is a real conundrum for them as well.
Laurel and the Brisinga huntsman of Voin are trying to kindle any sort of conversation about the hunt today,
Yes.
or try to have a neutral conversation to go to, but Sydel and Lord Golden are too engrossed in their own conversation to even participate at all. And Lord Golden seems to be heavily drinking, and Fitz is like, he's drinking for real this time. Great. Just says, I felt anxiety.
Yeah. Mood.
The fool, drunk, had always been both unpredictable and volatile. Would Lord Golden have more restraint when in his cups? Sybil's anger must have flared, for I felt a querying wit echo from something. I could not catch the thought, only the emotion that accompanied it. Something was fully willing to rend Lord Golden to shreds on Sybil's behalf. I did not doubt that his hunting cat was his wit beast. For that unguarded moment of fury, the connection between them sang with bloodlust. It was quenched in an instant, but there was no mistaking what it was. The boy was witted. And Lady Brisinga? He looked over at her and senses no trace of wit, but sees a motherly disapproval, and whether that's of the unrestrained wit that happened there and was disapproving of that, or just disapproving in general of his demeanor during this dinner, it is hard to say. Fitz once again is standing behind Lord Golden for the whole time, so he's just has nothing to do except listen, basically, and watch.
Right. And he talks about how during this time he doesn't learn really anything from what's being said, but he learns a lot from what glances are being exchanged and what's not being said.
Yes, and this is where the epigraph comes into play, where Tom Badgerlock was speaking on how people bonded to an animal for a long time can inherit some of their mannerisms. And this is where Fitz is kind of shining in his observational skills here. So there's a couple things. Lord Grayling, at one point, sat breathing through his white pinched nostrils for several moments while his wife spoke frantically to him in an undertone. She appeared willing to gamble the Brisinga's goodwill for the possible benefit of a better match. So, as we mentioned before, Lady Grayling was nervous that Sydel could not kind of walk the line between having a nobleman's attention and, gaining a promise from that nobleman later on.
Right.
But she's also willing to let it play out, while Lord Grayling is like, no, these are our friends. The Brisingas, basically. I don't want to betray them. And at the end of dinner, Fitz was satisfied that both Sybil and Lady Brisinga were witted, and equally certain that their huntsman Avoyne was not. Of the other guests at their table, there were two I suspected of the wit. A certain Lady Jarrett had something of the cat in her mannerisms. She was perhaps unaware of how she breathed in the scent of every dish before she ventured to taste it. Her spouse, a hale and hearty man, had a trick of turning his head sideways to the leg of fowl he was devouring, as if he had sharper teeth there with which to scissor the meat free. Small habits, but telling. As the prince had fled Buckkeep to Galekeep, so he might, when driven from Galekeep, go to another wit-friendly holding. Those two lived in the south. The prince's trail led north, but that did not mean he would not circle back. So Lady Brisinga, how he is certain is that she kept glancing at Fitz throughout the night. And he's like, oh no, I don't want to spark any attention. So I'm going to look down into the side and away and not make eye contact. And only after he observes the others did Fitz realize that's an incredible wolf-like attitude. So the next time that Lady Brisinga looks at him, he meets her eyes directly and kind of widens them like, oh, you're interested in me, giving a little indication there.
Right.
And she immediately unfocuses her eyes to stare through him, a very cat-like cat-like behavior. So he's like, yep, she's witted.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, she has given other signs to him leading up to this point. So it's not like that one action. But yeah, that is what seals it for him, that she's just really good at hiding that she's witted, but she is also. Which is really interesting. I do wonder if Lady Brisinga has noticed his wolf-like tendencies. Do we know why she keeps looking at him? He says that it seems as though she might know who he is. He's pretty sure he never met her as Fitz Chivalry, but being pretty sure is not the same as being 100% sure. And so it did give him a little bit of anxiety that maybe she was recognizing who he really was.
Could be. I mean, I guess if you are a noble, you've been around other or potentially seen other farseers.
Yeah.
Looks familiar, I guess. Family resemblance, but I don't know. I feel like I mentioned this before a few episodes ago, I know. And I don't know if I'm making this up because that's what happens with rereads. You don't remember everything. But I feel like there was some point where either Civil or Jade comes out with like, oh yeah, we found out this later or something. But weren't they warned that somebody witted was coming to find the prince?
I think, if not warned, told that it is likely to happen.
Okay.
Like, I think you're right. I think that is going to happen in the future where they find out that they were told to be on the lookout.
So that's what my thought is. Maybe she's just kind of, this guy's kind of acting weird, his little animal-like tendencies.
Is he?
Yeah. What's the point of him acting like this? So he's making these observations at dinner and quickly dismisses the idea that Lady Brisinga is the one that the prince is infatuated or seduced by, because she would have moved swiftly to entangle him in that court and not just sent him on his way. So something else was going on here, something strange, as the wolf had said. A brief flip of Lord Golden's hand at the end of the meal dismissed me. I went, but reluctantly. I wanted to witness whatever reactions his abominable behavior might bring. So other amusements were happening on for the diners. Fitz is dismissed. He goes to the kitchen and tries to get gossip about these new people that he's been noticing. However, all of the talk is about Lord Golden's actions, and he's getting lectured because of them. Basically finding out that Sydel and Civil have been promised since a young age, and how dare your master do this? And Fitz is all like, I don't know. I don't know if he does this regularly. I just got here.
Yeah, and they're trying to figure out, is this sort of a passing fancy of a traveling, wandering nobleman, or is this real? Like, is there a chance that this is his real feelings? Because if that's the case, they're fine. But it seems like this is just a whim of a noble who is now meddling with their master's affairs. So people are not happy with him on behalf of their masters because of his master.
And one of the questions that Lebvin, the kitchen woman, asks says, is your master good with a sword? For it was well known that Civil had a temper, and hospitality or no, the boy might challenge him over Sydel. And Fitz in his mind, I know later, says, I'm pretty sure he's awful with a sword.
Yeah. He's like, I'm not sure Lord Golden is going to be any better than the Fool. Yep. The Fool is really bad with the sword, at least last I knew. Which I believe still is true. I don't think that's really one of the skill sets of Beloved, learning how to fight.
So eventually pleads his duties and leaves the kitchen and goes back to the rooms, changes into sensible blues, and just sits there worried, basically. The depths of the night had passed, and we were venturing toward the shallows of dawn when there was a tap at the door. A dour-faced maid informed me that my master required my assistance. Heart in mouth, I followed her to discover Lord Golden senseless with drink on a bench in a parlor. He sprawled there like a cast-off garment. If other folk had witnessed his collapse, they had left. Even the maid gave me a small toss of her head as she abandoned me to tend to him. As soon as she left, I half expected him to rouse and tip me a wink that this was all a sham. He did not. Fitz kind of resorts to carrying Lord Golden back to the rooms, over his shoulder, drags off his boots and shakes him out of his jacket. As he fell back onto the bed, he said, "Well, I did it. I'm certain of it. I'll apologize tomorrow most abjectly to Lady Brisinga. Then we'll leave immediately, and all will be relieved to see us go. No one will follow us. No one will suspect we track the prince." So he's not feeling very good.
No.
He's saying, "I think I'm going to vomit."
Yeah, at the end of his
He's
speech, he says, "I think I'm going to vomit."
Fitz is demanding, "What exactly did you do?" "Oh, Ida, make it all stand still." He clenched his eyes tightly and spoke. "I kissed him. I knew that would do it." "You kissed Sydel? Civil's intended?" "No," he groaned, and I knew a short-lived moment of relief. "I kissed Civil." "What?"
This has got to be one of my top favorite conversations between Beloved and Fitz, because it is so funny. There are so many ups and downs of like Fitz being anxious and then relieved and then anxious again and then frustrated, and it's so interesting. And of course, Fool, even in the midst of being horribly drunk, is still finding a way to tease Fitz about all the detail, the salacious details, and not just speaking plainly, but sort of drawing out the tale.
Right, yeah. So Lord Golden explains that he had went to the bathroom, and when he came back, Civil was waiting for him, pulled him into a parlor, and confronts him. What were my intentions towards Sydel? Did I not grasp that they had an understanding? Blah, blah, blah. What did you say? I said... He paused abruptly, and his eyes grew round. He leaned toward the basin, but after a moment, he only burped ghastly and lay back. So he's really not doing good while he's trying to say this story. I said I understood their understanding and hoped that perhaps we could come to an understanding of our own. I clasped his hand in mine. I said I saw no difficulty, that Sydel was a lovely girl, as lovely a girl as he was a boy, and that I hoped we might all become close and loving friends. And then you kissed him? I said, incredulous. Lord Golden screwed his eyes shut. He seemed a bit naive. I wanted to be sure he took the fullness of my meaning. Ida and Elle in a tangle, I swore. I stood up, and he groaned as the bed moved beneath him. I walked to the window and stared out. How could you? I demanded of him. Oh, please, beloved, you needn't be jealous. It was the most brief and chaste kiss you could imagine. Oh, fool, I rebuked him. How could he make a jest of something like this? It wasn't even on the mouth, just a warm press of my lips to the palm of his hand, a single flick of my tongue. He smiled feebly. He snatched it away as if I had branded him, and then dismisses Tom Badgerlock to his room.
He says, "Go away. If I'm going to puke, I don't want you here watching me." So, also a really important detail about this kiss is that when Civil dragged Beloved into a room to fight, it was a room that other people were in doing things. So This wasn't a private room to challenge him. This is in front of everyone saying, "What are you doing?" And
like, dragged me into a sitting room. Yeah. So
and then it says where people were playing, where others were gaming. So so there is a crowd to witness this. It's not just Civil and Civil's word against Lord Golden. This was a kind of deliberate public thing.
Yeah, for sure. But Ida and Elle in a tangle is a swear that Fitz uses there.
Yes.
I don't know if you highlighted that or not.
I did indeed.
Your eyes lit up as I said that. As we know, tangles are notorious serpent terminology.
Yeah, that is what
not necessarily related to the serpents here. I will, first off, as I bring it up, I'm going to argue it against it right away.
Okay.
In a tangle just means in a mess, in a problem, in a bind. So it could just mean, Ida and Al, the two gods, are in a mess here. Like, what is happening? However, it's very interesting terminology, especially coming after the live ship trilogy.
Yes. And also not one that I believe we've heard yet.
I feel like we must have, right?
I don't know. This is a problem. We get 10 books in, 6 books in, 7 books in.
Yeah, I know.
And
5 years later.
Yeah, 5 years later. And I'm like, did they say that before? Also, now I want to know all the different swears of this world. And of course, I haven't really been keeping track of that. So I'm going to have to go back, write down all the swears. I don't know. But I did also think that was interesting. And it made me wonder if this had anything, if that was sort of a nod to readers who read the other trilogy, or if this is just potentially something that has been said before. It just didn't come up as something because we hadn't just read a different trilogy about tangles.
Yeah. Well, anyways, Tom Badgerlock is dismissed for the night.
Yes. I also just want to quick point out how funny it is that Beloved sort of draws out the fact that this was just a kiss on the hand. It wasn't, and really just like a quick kiss, but he says kiss as though he kissed Sydel on the mouth, and lets Fitz believe that up until the very end. And I think it's really interesting that he has the whole "don't be jealous, beloved," and Fitz doesn't say that he isn't or is jealous. He doesn't sort of push back like, "I'm not jealous." No, he just sort of continues on like, "I can't believe you do this as a joke.
I can't believe you're like joking in a time like this too." Yeah. It's more exasperated, just like quit making everything a joke kind of thing.
But interestingly, he was relieved that it wasn't Sydel that was kissed.
Well, because
he thought, "Oh, I just misheard," you think?
Yeah. It's like, "Oh, I kissed him." "You kissed Sydel?" "No." He's like, "Oh, thank goodness. I kissed Civil." "What?"
No. I don't know. So I think it's really interesting just Fitz's overall reactions to this and Beloved's sort of nonchalance and joking nature of the whole thing. But interestingly, this is the part that he really doesn't like, like this is a thing that he did that he isn't proud of. And I thought that was a really interesting detail because he says it again. Oh, where did it go? Maybe it's tomorrow, but when he wakes up, but he says that he doesn't like doing these things. Like he doesn't like having to do stuff like this.
Yeah, in the morning he says, "I hate what I did last night."
Yeah, and before he did it, he said, "I hate the things that I have to do." And so I think that's really interesting too, that this wasn't just a casual thing. And I think it really speaks to Beloved's sort of closed off nature, that intimacy is something that Beloved like holds very close and dear and doesn't just want to give that away to just anyone, even for a plot. You know what I mean? Like I think that's a really interesting part of Beloved's character.
So even when Lord Golden is getting sick that night, it doesn't go to him because, well, every man needs his own dignity at some point.
And he has little left.
Yeah, don't need to witness that.
But also, it kind of feels like this is a little bit of Fitz pulling a temper tantrum, because in my mind, my reading of this,
that's crazy to me.
Not temper tantrum. That's not the right word. You're looking at me like I'm crazy. But what I mean is, this is his friend who is getting ill after a night of drinking. And yes, he said like, "Go, I don't want to throw up in front of you." But I feel like the way their friendship is, they have been with each other through sickness and like poor health before, that normally Fitz would want to be there. The way he is with Nighteyes, when Nighteyes is hurt, he wants to help his friends, but I think he's kind of mad at what the fool has done. And so is sort of a little bit childishly being like, "Well, he wants his dignity, I'll let him have what's left," and ignoring helping his friend instead of just helping like he normally would if this was a different circumstance.
I didn't see that subtext in there. I thought it was more of just like, He didn't want me there. I won't go. But could be
But
interesting read into.
I guess I feel like that's there because we've seen him so many other times, like, be willing to help beloved or any other loved ones whenever they're not doing well. He, like, wants to be there for them. So it just felt like a very, like, okay, I'll leave you alone.
But before we get to the morning, we're going to end it there. Thank you so much for tuning in to Is Fitz Happy this week. If you have thoughts, please let us know at isfitshappy@gmail.com, or you can message us what you think at isfitshappy at Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Reddit, Blue Sky, Threads, or on all of those. So let us know what you think about if Fitz is like truly upset about what the fool did here, or just kind of upset socially. And this is not a discreet way to disengage.
Yeah.
Fool.
Yeah.
Or why you think Lord Golden is so upset about what he has to do to get away, please let us know. We will finish the rest of this episode next week. I know we took a week break and now we're doing 2 parts, but it's a dense, long one. So thanks for sticking through it.
Thank you. All right. We are to our favorite portion of the podcast, which is whenever we get to hear what you guys have to say to us. And since we were gone for a week, we have a lot. But first, we're going to start with some emails that got sent to us. The first one being from Simon, and it is about mist cats. So Simon wrote in to talk about the Brisinga's defiance of the piebalds and pointedly not answering the questions about who got Dutiful's mist cat from its lair, but did also want to point out the doofus is Avoyne who told them that only the one who takes the cat from the lair can win its heart and then has it for life. And worth noting that in that regard that this is another rule which isn't in fact a rule because, as you guys noted, Cat loves Dutiful.
Yeah. So there are a lot of misconceptions about this mist cat, and it seems to be a legendary cat, but also the huntsman who supposedly should have dealings with them at some point doesn't know everything about them.
Yeah, I think it helps that this chapter we have Fitz fairly certain that Avoyne's is not witted at all. So it would make sense to me that...
I mean, this one is in reflection to the previous one where he was still curious, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think knowing that coming into this, that Avoyne's is... Well, I guess we don't know for sure. Maybe it'll be revealed later, but I'm pretty sure he's not witted. And it would make sense that if he works with a witted family who has cats, hunting cats, who have friends that are witted to other cats, that a really easy way to explain why a mist cat, which is notoriously really hard to train, is so docile for these people is that they found them in their dens. And like that could be a myth that's created by witted people to sort of protect the wit bond.
Yeah. But also Simon really did like them pointedly not answering as an act of defiance.
Yeah.
I liked that interpretation.
Yeah. Well, because I really do feel like as much as I think this episode, I kind of harp on them being the bad guys, they are also victims in this, right? Like they're being held hostage in their own home. And so I think there's just something that you do naturally, whether or not you agree with some of the points that the people that are holding you hostage, you're going to like do everything you can to not give in places where you don't have to. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know.
Last thing that Simon has in this email is is to point out that one of the Graylings they think is a piebald, and we're wondering if we had pointed out or if they had just missed it when we were talking about it, and we had not talked about that at all because I don't remember this at all as a point.
Yeah, I don't know either. But if they are a piebald, it does. I mean, it would make sense that they would have piebald's there to literally watch them.
Yeah, some sort of agent. I don't know if
Yeah.
one of the Greylings is or not. I just don't remember that. But it would make sense if somebody was there from the piebalds.
Right.
And that's kind of Simon's point, is that they were under duress and under threat at the dinner table.
And still did the act of defiance, potentially, depending on how you read it. Yeah. So that is a good point, too, though, that there are probably people there that are part of the piebalds. I thought that it was more the people that come later that are piebald group members. That's why they're bringing in more people.
Yeah, maybe.
But obviously I could be wrong. And we know that the daughter, Sydel, is witted for sure. So it would make sense if one of her parents is part of the piebald group, or at least also in the same predicament.
Right. Another email we got was from Hedwig. So thank you, Simon, first of all, for sending that in. Hedwig's email is about our discussion on accents, when we were talking about the Jamalian accent and Lord Golden slurring, and if that was, Robin Hobb writing out some of the accent because it seemed similar to Clef's, of how Clef spoke. And Hedwig was writing in because we were discussing how those accents sounded, what kind of regions had different accents. And I made the mention that Clef's could be an uneducated accent.
Yes.
Which Hedwig rightly pointed out that could be a very harmful stereotype, because people who have different accents are often looked down upon and frowned upon as like, oh, this person's uneducated. They don't speak like us.
Right.
I'm going into this as, slightly ignorant and just kind of saying what my beliefs were from being raised in middle of America literature classes, where we focused on people like Steinbeck and Mark Twain, and they often wrote in I dialects, which is just writing out the vernacular of the characters. And a lot of those books that focus on that, middle America kind of life are largely uneducated farm folk in the books. So I think maybe that's where I kind of had that association, I guess. And we see it in more modern books and media, like J.K. Rowling with Hagrid, writing out his vernacular as well. And Hagrid was kind of famously as a plot point in like the third year of Hogwarts before he got expelled.
Right.
So there's just like a large fabric of society and how we teach things is growing up with something that is not proper or posh accent or fully enunciated accents as uneducated. And I did play into that as well. So I do apologize for that. Clef, we don't know his upbringing. We don't know if he was educated or not. And that could just be a regional accent that he has.
Yeah.
That's written out.
Yeah. And I think it's really important for us to be able to like take that criticism and be able to grow and be more mindful going forward. We do appreciate whenever things like this is brought to our attention so that we can do better. And I definitely don't think it was from a place of malice, but
no, and Hedwig doesn't think so either.
No, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't harm done. So, so we wanted to make sure that was cleared up and sort of, give the explanation. So thank you for pointing that out so that we can keep that going forward.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because, speaking of like the characters and accents and stuff, we haven't really gotten any further clarifying comments or anything about it. We just know that Jamalia has a certain accent. Bingtown has a certain accent, but they speak the same language as Jamalia. Bingtown can communicate with the Six Duchies, and from Fitz's point of view, he doesn't write out any accent that characters have from that Bingtown delegation that I remember.
Yeah.
And Laurel doesn't speak with anything approaching like an accent kind of thing. Jack does not in the live ships, but Clef does.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean,
It's
we could also,
odd.
even if it's not to do with like education levels, which we're saying don't equate. I think it is true that in different places there are different accents, right? Like somebody in America, for example, who lives in Louisiana has a different accent to somebody who lives in Georgia, and they have a different accent to somebody who lives in California. But even on a smaller scale in England, you have closer together with those different accents, even just a town apart. So, yeah, I feel like it's one of those situations where it must just be indicative of where Clef is from. But it's so strange that it's so, like, distinctly pointed out by Hobb, right?
Right,
Like,
I know.
why does Clef have an accent when nobody else in world seems to have an accent? At least not like a detectable dialect written in that way. So I find that so strange. I don't know.
Hedwig also writes in here that they very much enjoy Beloved's way of using their unusual physique to help them create larger than life and unusual characters that help them hide in plain sight and fly under the radar. Because the Fool, Lord Golden, and Amber are such great examples and so different from one another, but they each use their physique in a different way. The Fool was ostracized and kind of a loner, and while the Fool obviously doesn't love that and how much ridicule they're getting, they use it to their advantage because they're under the radar and no one's paying attention to them much, but the right people are.
Right.
Amber obviously sticks out quite a bit, but uses that striking, and more so their woodworking, but like their unusual talents to kind of stick in the right people's minds. And then Lord Golden, obviously, we've seen at work in the last few chapters. That's very true. And lastly, Hedwig is going back to a previous discussion about the disappearance of the original Elderlings, which no doubt will come back in later books, and in particular the final trilogy. Given that Elderlings' dragons' changes require proximity to and active meddling by dragons, I find it quite easy to see how the previously possibly quite populous Elderlings could disappear from the world quite quickly. Following the cataclysm and active persecution by Claris, I can imagine perhaps small pockets of original Elderlings surviving and hiding. In the absence of dragons and their meddling, any children they bore would be unchanged, regular-looking people, and the physical traits of elderling kind would be lost in a generation, except perhaps non-outwardly visible traits such as certain types of magic. And I partially agree with that. I do agree with the basic premise that without dragons, those changes are no longer guided. But I think Elderlings' kids, with or without dragons, would see some changes. Not as much as we see for the people who live in Kelsingra or who live in Trehog, I think. But there's still some sort of change to their parents' DNA. There's some sort of essence exchange there that the people who are born to elderling parents, I don't think would be completely normal looking yet. But if their changes or their physiological changes would be enough where they need a dragon to live, those children would die out. And only the quote unquote human and normal looking ones would then have further children. So it'd be like basically reverse evolution back into humans, I guess, because there's no more magical influence. So in that case, I think that theory is correct of that without dragons, the Elderlings, in my mind, slowly change back to normal humans.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So this made me think about how there is sort of that whole portion of the final trilogy where Fitz goes to Kelsingra and heals, I think it's Malta and Rain's child.
Efren, yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then also
a bunch of others.
Yeah, everybody after. But it starts with Malta and Rain's child. And even the adults themselves are sort of getting healed and fixed. And so that really makes me think about the fact that in the past, the Elderlings must have been a lot closer to dragons. I guess there would have been more, but it seems as though dragons only fix their own Elderlings, not anybody else's. So I don't really know how those Elderlings were able to go so long without contact with their dragon to like not be ill all of the time or suffer ill effects. And also it's really hard.
Longer time in the presence of dragons, so the kids born were a little bit more accommodating.
Yeah, maybe. And also just the idea that like the elderlings that we get to hear of were not the first generation. They were all
Right.
several generations
That's
in.
what I'm
So
saying,
that, yeah. So probably, yeah, there's more of that. I don't know, but it's so hard to tell because all the children, the dragons make some comment, I think, in the next trilogy about allowing children to survive or something. Like the dragons have full control whether or not the elderlings can reproduce even. It feels like they're like they play a part in that. So I don't know if elderlings could have children without the dragons. I don't know.
Or if it was like a permission thing, like,
Yeah.
we need more elderlings. And
Yeah, right. Like it's very unclear. So that could also play a part, but I think it is a really good idea to look at the fact that without dragons, what happens to elderlings, and that probably is why they're not.
It's also
on.
like the current dragons that are there that need to fix people in Kelsingra are very unique, where Tintaglia just flies off because she's distracted by ice fire, right? Like,
right.
They're gone because she's like, I'm giving up on the little dragons. These elderlings are fine, but they're annoying to me mostly.
Right.
Let's try to populate the world with actual dragons.
Right.
And the other dragons are barely sentient in some cases. So I feel like there's a lot of differences in responsibility to them, maybe.
Fair.
Than ancient ones, but who knows? We don't really get an insight into their lives of elderlings with dragons, really.
But lots to think on.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, Hedwig.
We also had an email from Anna, and Anna is talking about the wit. And as far as Anna is aware, Fitz cannot talk to other witted people through the wit. He can only talk to other people through skilling. So how can Dutiful talk to the woman through the wit? Is it because she's in the cat's mind? And also, is the cat in on the piebald's plan? Why is the cat cooperating?
So for the cat being in on the plan, I think the cat doesn't fully know what the plan is, right? I think that's part of it, is that the cat was young, is still young,
basically
and very naive.
Force bonded Paladine because Paladine was dying or something, and they put Paladine's mind into the cat.
Yeah, so I think the cat doesn't really know what's happening.
Yeah.
And then when she finally does realize what's happening, that's when she like tells Fitz to, end her so that she doesn't hurt Dutiful. So I think that's pretty good evidence that the cat doesn't know what's happening.
I think the cat is aware of Paladine in her, even now, with like some comments.
Absolutely.
But not aware of like, hey, we're gonna do harm to the prince kind of thing. It's just like, I have this other person in me, but I'm bonded to the prince. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's definitely kind of a weird situation there. So
yeah. But also agree with you on 100%. I don't think Fitz can talk to other humans with the wit at all. He can only skill through them. So in terms of Dutiful and Paladine, I think it is, you are again correct. It's because Paladine is within the cat's body. If Fitz would have stayed in Nighteyes, I'm pretty sure Beric could have talked to Fitz.
I think he did. Beric did talk to Fitz.
Through the wit?
Yeah. Well,
maybe.
Because doesn't he like bring him out of the wolf with, like, he like is begging Fitz through talking to him, which I feel like,
I think he was talking out loud in that scene, but it's not to say that it couldn't have been some sort of feeling with the wit as well. I'm not sure.
But yeah, I think it is a good question. I mean, we do know that animals can talk to each other through the wit. We just had an example this chapter with Nighteyes talking to the horse, saying, I'm too tired and not hungry enough to eat you, to calm my black down. So
I hope it was in this half.
Yeah.
We did split this into 2 parts. So.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Okay.
But, maybe it wasn't.
Either way,
Either way.
Nighteyes does talk directly to the horse, and it seems like it's not just an aside for Fitz's sake. It seems like Nighteyes is directing the thought at
to the horse. Yeah. Because why would Nighteyes say that to Fitz? Fitz already knows all that and knows that Nighteyes is not going to hurt the horse.
But I also feel like they usually don't talk to other animals.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's one of those things where it's just like, why would a wolf talk to a horse? Why would a bird talk to a ferret? Like, there's no...
Mm-hmm. So, I think that can happen, just not human to human. So it has to be that Paladine is in the cat's body. It is.
They're like sharing enough essence to
be considered the cat's mind kind of thing. Weird situation all around there. Nighteyes is not wrong when it says there's strange things going on.
Yeah. Well, because also if you think about it, she's able to make him aware of who she is as a human because he keeps thinking he almost sees her.
Right.
So it's like even weirder. I don't know. That's a weird one. I'm going to keep an eye out to like go more in depth on this.
Thank you, Anna, for that email. Anna. We also had a few posts on Facebook, some comments on our episode 266, chapter 17. And one of them was from Cookie Baker. I think the reason Lord Golden is so careful about not acting suspicious is more than on the surface. If they suspect the Brisingas of being involved, they have to stay undercover so that they are not followed by more people. The more desperate the witted people feel to hide Dutiful, the more irrational danger they will put him in. So Cookie Baker commented this. Again, we took a week off, so this was a couple weeks ago, and this fits right in with what we found out this chapter as well, of what Fitz's line of thinking was too. So Cookie Baker is hitting the nail right on the head here with, if they're involved in this plot, we cannot let them know an inkling of it because then they will give Dutiful more help and could put us in more danger.
Or Dutiful in danger.
Or Dutiful in danger, yes. So it is... That's kind of the reasoning that they're sending to us because we had a whole discussion on, is this even necessary?
Yeah. And Cookie Baker was not alone because Bastion also thinks that it was not the fool being selfish.
Yes. I think Beloved wanted to be careful for the same reason Ketcherkin didn't send an army to find Dutiful, despite being certain that he was in Galeton. It was impossible to retrieve Dutiful as silently as possible to prevent raising any flags regarding his possible wittedness and his possible reservations regarding the marriage. If the Brisingas were willing to go as far as kidnapping Dutiful, essentially committing treason, I don't think that's essentially. I think that is treason. Yeah. There would have been no telling what they would reveal about Dutiful, especially if they were backed into a corner by giving them cues that, people were there to rescue Dutiful. So yeah, there's very strong reasons that I don't think was laid out properly by the fool in that chapter.
Right. Which also we're in Fitz's point of view and he's thinking he wants to go. He wants to go now. He doesn't see the importance.
And he had the headache and
I mean, to be fair, I'm still in the camp of it could have been done if they wanted to, but I do definitely understand more that it's better to be as careful as possible, right? Mm-hmm. Like you don't want to put anybody's life in jeopardy if you can help it. So I do get it, but I do feel like the initial reason to stay felt really
a little bit
less of thinking of all these like grander reasons and more like, ooh, but I'm pretending to be Lord Golden and I don't want to mess that up. Mm-hmm. And then like...
So you could have gone nuclear option the first day.
Yeah, like I just... I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it feels like there are good reasons, but I don't think that was the initial reason that kept Beloved saying we should stay here, if that makes sense. Like,
right. Yeah.
I'm not saying it was a bad choice. I'm saying that I think it stemmed from a place of selfishness, but I could be wrong.
Cookie Baker also responded to Bastion's comment on this, saying, being that there are 3 agents on someone else's territory, their only weapon is secrecy and confusion. So what power do they really have to keep the Brasingos from simply kidnapping them as well? All they can do is continue acting the way they are and then secretly as possible get Dutiful out. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are very good points.
Definitely.
And then Bastion also goes to talk about the horse.
Oh, yeah. The fools, we were confused and asked about why the fool is so concerned about my black being a great gift for Fitz.
Yes. So, regarding the discussion about the horse at the end of the chapter, I remember this passage from The Fool's Fate, shortly before Fool convinces Girl on Dragon to return Fitz's memories by giving her the rooster crown. I felt guilty. If I had not been chipping away at Girl on Dragon, you never would have done it. I wished to undo it. Years later, when I came to see you at your cottage, I thought, surely he will be healed now. Surely he will have recovered. He swung his gaze to meet me, but you had not. You had just stopped in some ways. Oh, you were older and wiser, I suppose, but you had not made any move on your own to reach out to life again. But for your wolf, I think it would have been even worse. As it was, you were living like a mouse in a wall, off the crumbs of affection that Starling tossed to you. As thick-skinned as she is, even she could see it. She gave you hap and you took him. But if she had not brought him to your doorstep and dumped him there, would you have sought out anyone to share your life? He leaned closer to me and said, even after you came back to Buckkeep and your old world, you held yourself apart from it. No matter what I did or offered, my black, you couldn't even connect to a horse. So Fool is not just inquiring about whether or not Fitz liked the horse simply because Fitz is a connoisseur. It's also because he's trying to give Fitz something he would be able to connect to in hopes of maybe fixing the effects of his lost memory.
Yeah, so part of that concern is the fool's guilt as well, basically, is what Bastion is saying here and what the text says. Because Fool was trying to see any improvement possible and feels himself personally responsible for having Fitz put his memories into Girl and a Dragon and being stunted.
Right.
It's obviously not his complete fault or anything, but yeah, which I had totally forgotten about this passage. So thank you very much for posting it and reminding me of this conversation.
Yeah, and I think that conversation is really important because that means even right now, Beloved is really worried about Fitz and his lack of growth, so to speak. And you can't really notice that through Fitz's eyes, right? Fitz doesn't seem to pick up on Beloved trying to get him to engage in other parts of life.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
it's still early, but
looking at that, the last few chapters with that lens, him pushing him to like, oh, go flirt with some kitchen people.
yeah.
Here, talk to Laurel for a while. You can kind of see him arrange some, social situations for
Yes.
Fitz, but it's not a lot.
No.
It's just kind of like, gauging him.
But I think also this will be good to keep in mind going forward because this is just the start of them being together. And with Nighteyes soon to be exiting the book, we will have a good look at what else he tries to do to now that vacuum has been created of losing Nighteyes.
And we talked a little bit before as well about, you didn't seek anyone to share this life with you. And yeah, that's true. Fitz is an isolationist, as I said, but we've also talked about the other side where people could have easily reached out to him and never did. So,
right. Sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. And yeah, I don't know. It's really hard, right? Like, is Fitz staying in one place and not reaching out and making new connections because of him being partially forged? Or is that his own trauma, regardless of the partial forging?
And as always, it's both, and Fitz is not happy.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Bastion.
And thank you, Cookie Baker, and thank you to everyone else who writes in. We always love hearing from you guys, and we can't wait to hear what else you have to tell us next week.